from the beginning, we've had to just get out into the field and spend time with customers. As an example, we were building our first mobile app and it's for frontline workers. We got it out and had some users start using it. And it turns out that their hands are a lot bigger and a lot more callous than ours are. And tap targets were a little bit too small. The three big themes that we align around are, first is safety, second is efficiency, and then third is sustainability. But it turns out for that software to be useful, we need to get data from the physical world. And we found the way to do that was actually by having integrated hardware and software in our solutions. And the way to get the data easily and make it seamless for the customer was to have. And then we started engaging with the market, with customers, and we quickly found out.
Hey, this is Carlos's AI voice clone. He is the CEO of Product School and the host of the Product Podcast. He asked me to set the stage for today's guest before he takes over the interview. This is a special episode since it was recorded in our podcast studio in San Francisco. Kiren Sekar is the Chief Product Officer at Samsara, a $20 billion public company not many people in the tech world know about. Samsara is transforming physical operations by digitizing industries like transportation, manufacturing, and construction with cutting-edge Internet of Things and artificial intelligence solutions. Kieran has been at Samsara since its founding in 2015, leading the development of products that generate over $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. In this episode, Kieran shares insights on how to adopt a multi-product as soon as possible, how to create a product strategy that integrates hardware and software, how to create feedback loops that combine data and in-person interviews, real-world examples of how they're leveraging AI to prevent accidents and reduce CO2 emissions, the 70-20-10 framework for investment decisions, and how smaller bets grow into significant offerings. Let's dive in.
This episode is brought to you by Persona, the adaptable identity platform that helps businesses fight fraud, meet compliance requirements, and build trust. For example, how can you know you're really listening to me, Carlos, and not my AI voice clone? These days, it's easier than ever for fraudsters to steal voices, faces, and identities. That's where Persona comes in, helping leading companies such as LinkedIn, OpenAI, Etsy, and Twilio to securely verify individuals and businesses worldwide, going far beyond traditional identity checks. Of course, every company has different needs depending on its industry, use cases, risk tolerance, and user demographics. That's why Persona provides flexible building blocks that allow you to build tailored verification flows that maximize conversion while minimizing risk automatically. Whether you work at a startup or large enterprise, listeners to the Product Podcast can get started for free by visiting withpersona.com/product school. That's withpersona.com/product school. Kieran, welcome to the Product Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Carlos. Excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you because Samsara is a company that's incredible, but not too many people know about it. So maybe you can start by just giving us a quick overview.
Yeah. So first, starting with the customers, and that's the reason that a lot of folks in Silicon Valley may be less familiar with Samsara. We build products for the world of physical operations. And so that's the energy utilities, the logistics networks, food and beverage production, construction firms who are building roads and bridges and data centers, the physical operation economy. And we started the company about 10 years ago, really with the vision of building great technology that gives them data and allows them to operate more efficiently, more safely, and more sustainably. And it's a huge set of industries. And as we got deeper and deeper into it, realized it's actually 40% of GDP. It's billions of employees worldwide, but it's been historically really underserved by technology. And so we've been excited to put really great technology in their hands and see the impact.
I think you said that in a conversation we had. It's like the coolest $20 billion plus company that nobody has heard about.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I think is counterintuitive to the Silicon Valley playbook is that you're building tech not for the real economy, right? You mentioned like some of the industries, it's not just B2B, SaaS, and high tech. So I want to learn more about that. You mentioned you started the company around,
10 years ago. Yeah.
And you were one of the founding members?
Yep, part of the founding team. Our co-founders previously had started a company called Moroi, which is a networking company. I joined Moroi when it was about 35 employees. And we grew that business to about 100 million in revenue. It was acquired by Cisco back in 2012, the networking company. And we spent a few years kind of getting it set up within Cisco. The business is still doing great. We see the products all over the place, which is really cool. But we were ready to go be building a new company again, and spent time thinking about what we were excited about. And actually, we had at Meraki customers across all industries. Right, this was late 2000s, and we were building a new way of deploying Wi-Fi networks. And at the time, all these different people were putting in Wi-Fi networks for the first time, and we saw that these operations industries were deploying great networks, but they were connecting these really antiquated systems to them. And you would go see their environments, and you saw a lot of pen and paper, a lot of big maps on the wall, IBM mainframes, and green screens. And we said, hey, there's something here. Clearly, there's an appetite for technology because they're putting in these networks. But let's go. We can see what we can do for them, and that was kind of the genesis.
So one of the things that is common in Silicon Valley when starting new companies is this thing around you have to focus. You have to build something, make sure that it works before you scale it. And I guess you went multi-product relatively quickly. So what was your rationale behind that?
Well, so we came from the technology side. None of us came from these industries, right? So we had to learn about what was relevant and what was going to have impact. And we knew from the technology side that it was possible to start collecting data that they couldn't have collected in the past, right? And that was, sensors and cameras getting really, really cheap, cellular networks that were widely available, cloud computing. We said, hey, right now, they don't have data, they don't have visibility. Let's go figure out how to build products that let them know what's going on in their operations. But we didn't know what was going to be most relevant. So we actually started building prototypes where we built a platform that could do many different things, but then we would prototype end to end use cases. And then we just started engaging with the market, with customers. And we quickly found out kind of what was useful and what wasn't. And, a lot of friendly customers would say, hey, for example, we were experimenting with temperature sensors, like wireless temperature sensors. You can stick them in different places. And we thought what could be really cool is if you put these in commercial refrigerators, right? Becomes super easy to see the temperature on your phone. You can figure out if they're failing, if there's food that's going to spoil. And some of our beta testers tried it out and they said, this is really cool, but those refrigerators almost never fail. What does is, where food does get spoiled, it's when it goes in the truck, and the refrigeration unit of the truck, it fails, or it's not set right, or a door gets open. Could you help with that? And so by going broad, we found problems that were relevant, and then we would steer towards them.
That's a good point because I think from the outside that sounds less obvious, but if you go into the details, right, there might be some commonality across the products that you are building, even though technically they are serving multiple industries.
100%. And, we would really look for cases where we could find products and solutions that we could sell and that were useful across industries. And that's one of the things that's a little bit different about our company compared to many of the traditional companies that were building technologies for these industries. They would go very deep into construction or food and beverage or logistics, and that meant that they were solving more narrow problems. And as a result, they weren't able to scale as much. They weren't as able to invest as much in technology. And by focusing on these horizontal problems, we were actually able to have a lot more impact and then scale faster as well.
So hardware is another unique aspect, I guess, to your product. You have both hardware and software, and so how does that influence the way you build?
Yeah. So we think first about what's the customer problem we're trying to solve, and then what's the right technology to solve that. And ultimately, customers are spending time in Samsara software. That is where they're interacting day to day, and software is kind of how they understand their operations and how they see impact. But it turns out that for that software to be useful, we need to get data from the physical world. And we found the way to do that was actually by having integrated hardware and software in our solutions. And there was no kind of religion about it, right? It was just really practically, how do we understand where the trucks are, where the assets are, what's going on with the driver and their safety, what's going on with the temperature in that refrigerated trailer, that required getting data, and the way to get the data easily and make it seamless for the customer was to have an end-to-end solution. So that's why we have hardware in our products today. But we had some hardware DNA from our experience at Meraki, which is also a hardware and software company. And by having hardware in the toolkit from early on, or really from the beginning, it kind of opened the aperture of problems that we could solve.
I mean, I guess having a background in hardware gives you that unfair advantage to understand how that can help you get an edge when you are building software. At the same time, I'm thinking when you think about raising money or starting a company, that's expensive, right? So how did you land in the decision to, okay, we're going to focus on getting the capital that we need to actually build with hardware almost from the beginning, knowing that there are other implications?
So one of the amazing things was that Meraki was actually started out of our founder's PhD work at MIT. And they were building in their research, they were building a Wi-Fi mesh network, basically to connect the city of Cambridge. They were at MIT, and blanket it in Wi-Fi. And they were actually, through their research, building this network that was running. And so, as grad students with very little capital, they had to figure out, how do you get a system and how do you demonstrate that it's working end to end. And so I think you really, from the early days, the team got good at proving value with relatively little capital. And then, of course, when you actually want to scale, that requires more resources. But with some really clever engineering and figuring out, how are you using off the shelf components, how are you finding ways to prototype things quickly, we're able to figure out, where there's value, what works and what didn't, with relatively little capital, and then scale from there. So we really had kind of working products before we had to, and a working business model before we had to really ramp up production.
I think that's a good insight. I think that from the outside, I don't come from a hardware background. I always think of it as something expensive or that will take too long to test. And I think finding those scrappy opportunities to still leverage hardware in a more software way can give you that speed.
And it certainly depends on the product that you're building, of course,
Uh,
right? There are certain products that are just very capital intensive. One of the things that I think we've really benefited from is understanding customer problems, but also really understanding what are the technology curves, or technology waves. And when you can be aligning customer problems with these waves, I think that's when you can make really magical product experiences and also have a lot of revenue growth. And if, for example, with Samsara, we were very cognizant of the fact that in the early days, the proliferation of smartphones in the 2010s was making connectivity really inexpensive. It was making sensors inexpensive. It was making cameras inexpensive, because all of these were experiencing the economies of scale from the boom in smartphones. Right? And we said, okay, well, if it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to capture data and then bring it into the cloud, what does that make possible, right? What are the new types of products you can build with that? And so that, I think, was what made it possible to build these products in a cost effective way. And we're seeing the same thing now with AI, right? We've got the hyperscalers and the frontier model companies spending billions and billions and billions of dollars to build AI technologies, and then we can benefit from them and then find ways to apply them to new problems. So these are the types of curves that I think we and many other companies are able to benefit
yeah.
from.
Yeah, so you caught one curve early on, the mobile and cloud. You're now catching the next one. And what are some of those specific use cases where you are finding value with AI?
So what's super exciting is that we have so much data coming into our platform, 10 trillion plus data points coming into the platform every single year. And that's GPS locations, that is sensor data, that is video. Customers with Samsara connected vehicles are actually driving on 99% of the roads every single day. We have millions of connected assets out in the world ingesting data into our cloud. And historically, we were only able to use a small fraction of that data to power our products, because creating AI models was relatively expensive when we were building custom models from scratch. And with these new technologies, the ability to apply AI to new problems is just completely changing, right? And I feel like a kid in the candy store where you have a product that you built, 8, 9 years ago. It was starting to feel mature, and all of a sudden, there's so many more things you can do with it. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Um, First, for some context, we have a few different products on our platform. Our number one product is actually a video safety product for drivers, where we have a internet connected dash cam that they put in fleet vehicles. It can do AI in the dash camera. It's also connected into our cloud. And the reason this is relevant is if you operate a large fleet, accidents happen all the time, right? If you have hundreds or thousands of vehicles in your fleet, you're having accidents, every week or sometimes every day. And these are expensive, they're disruptive, and sometimes people are getting really badly hurt or even dying, right? So we built our product or solution to use AI to basically be like a virtual safety coach driving alongside with the driver. And it's able to give them feedback around, hey, looks like you have your phone out. Reminder, put down your phone or increase your following distance and help keep them safe out on the road. And then it helps the company, the operator, understand, hey, who are the best drivers who are really safe, and how do you recognize them? Who are the folks who need help? And that's the product that we've been building over several years now. It's the leading product in the market. It's $500 million plus in ARR, and even that product we're able to completely rethink with AI now. And I'll give you a concrete example. The technology, it's super impactful. Customers deploy it, their accident rates drop by 30 to 50%, right? So huge financial and human impact. But one of the big concerns is, hey, is this going to feel like Big Brother, and are all my drivers going to quit? And so early on, we kind of organized the product to actually be about positive recognition as well as proactive as coaching. And our customers are using it to run, safe driver bonuses and things like that. And so now we can actually like basically turbocharge that, right? So take for instance the case where someone slams on their brakes. In the past, without additional context, you'd say, "Oh, that's harsh driving. That's going to negatively impact their safety score." Now, if someone slams on the brakes, we capture that video, and the AI is able to actually understand what's happening. It's looking at where's the driver paying attention. It's looking at their speed. It's looking at the road conditions, everything happening around them, and the AI will actually say, "Hey, this driver was attentive. They were obeying the speed limit. They were not distracted. They had their hands on the wheel." And a pedestrian unexpectedly ran in front of them, and they had a harsh braking event to avoid a collision with the pedestrian. This was an example of defensive driving and actually increased their safety score. And so that's just one example. That wouldn't have been possible a couple of years ago. And now the drivers see that and they say, "Oh, this is awesome. This system is actually looking out for me, and it's highlighting what I'm doing well. And actually, by the way, most of the time I'm the one who's driving safely." And then they start telling people around them, like, "Hey, no, the system's actually really good. You want that in your fleet." And then more and more customers are starting to adopt it because they're no longer worried about their drivers being turned off. And then that's driving down accident rates. So very tactical example of how the technology turns into fewer accidents out on the road.
I love that because it's really talking about the real economy, right? There's so many people out there who might not be super technical, but still are using AI. And you mentioned there are financial metrics that
Mhm.
obviously you want to influence, but there are also like metrics that are influencing the world, right? Like you're talking about prevention of casualties or
Right.
prevention of accidents. So tell me more about how you're able to connect that. It's not obvious, right? Like it's a lot of companies who are just focusing more on the, okay, I'm going to increase user adoption and I'm going to drive more revenue. But it seems like you are going one step beyond.
Yeah. So the three kind of big themes that we align around are the problems that are just they're universal across operations industries, and customers have cared about them forever, right? First is safety. These are dangerous physical jobs. They all care about safety. Second is efficiency. These are generally relatively low margin industries. They have high budgets, they spend a lot of money, but they have thin margins. So they're really looking to say, how do I operate efficiently? And then third is sustainability, right? Whether that's meeting their emissions mandates or helping to just save fuel. They're looking to find ways to operate more sustainably. So those are the three big themes. And actually, we're able to measure now across tens of thousands of customers that in aggregate we're helping to prevent about 250,000 accidents every year. Like these are accidents where people can be getting injured. And so that's directly tied to safety, right? With efficiency, there's lots of different ways we can contribute to efficiency, but a big one is actually just about the frontline worker. How do you make these hard jobs a little bit easier, right? A little bit more pleasant for the worker and help them do their job more effectively as well. And it turns out there's a lot of paperwork they have to do, right? And we're now able to take that paperwork and digitize it. We're digitizing hundreds of millions of previously paper-based workflows every single year now, and making their jobs a little bit easier. And then with sustainability, we're actually saving billions of pounds of CO2 emissions. And that translates to massive fuel savings for our customers as well. But they're finding ways to use less fuel, to use alternative fuels, and save money while also reducing emissions. So these are the kind of big picture themes. Now, when it comes to our product roadmap, we say, okay, we're thinking about a new product or a new feature. How is it going to translate to one of those? How are we going to prove it out over time? And ultimately, if it aligns with those metrics, it's going to save our customers money, which means that they're going to get more business value from the product, and it's also going to improve the operations for their workers and their community and the environment.
I want to switch gears to talk about customer feedback. I mean, I heard you talk about the amount of data points that you have, but at the same time, if you are serving people who are frontline workers,
Mhm.
there's no replacement for just being there and learning directly. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's something that I think we've had to be really intentional about since the very early days, right? It's not a product where the customer is an engineer or an SDR or a consumer where you are the consumer or have the consumers within your organization. So from the beginning, we've had to just get out into the field and spend time with customers. And what's been really cool is actually just getting to learn about how the world works and getting tours of infrastructure construction projects and agricultural facilities and energy and rail yards and all these different industries. So that's been incredibly fun, but it's also necessary, right? So as an example, we were building our first mobile app, and it's for frontline workers. We made a first version of it. We thought it was is pretty slick, pretty nice. Our designers thought it was awesome. We got it out and had some users start using it, and it turns out that their hands are a lot bigger and a lot more callous than ours are, and, the tap targets were a little bit too small, and actually having the designers see that and empathize with that, and then be able to go back a few days later and say, "Hey, try this one, is it better?" And have the user say, "Yes," right? That's the type of feedback, whether it's about, usability of the product or even what problems can we be solving. And, we will meet with customers as much as possible out in their environments. And sometimes it's, a corporate conference room, but really the best meetings are when we're out in a field site and we can go meet with the frontline teams who are using the products, and you start noticing things. Like we had a customer, really happy customer, was using a number of our products, and we were visiting them, and we were looking around, and we started seeing these clipboards everywhere, like big stacks of paper all filled out by hand, and started asking, "Hey, what are those?" And we started learning there was, okay, a couple of different things that they had to fill out by hand, and then someone had to go actually enter them into a computer, and they had this big team of people taking these forms from the field, entering it in the system, and then running reports and figuring out what to do with it. And we said, well, if we could capture this in software and you could have your report automatically, would that save you time? And they said, like, yes, that would be amazing. I said, well, and what if we could automatically figure out the anomalies so you could get alerts when something needs attention? Like that would be mind blowing. So we prototype that, we go back and we show it to them, and then they realize, hey, an inspection happens out in the field, and someone realizes that there's a maintenance need on a piece of equipment that maybe makes it unsafe to operate, the mechanic actually gets a notification in real time, and they can figure out, okay, I have the parts in stock. Let's get it in. We can get it scheduled for today. In the meantime, they can go use this other asset that's not being used. And you just save people, countless hours of work that no one wants to be doing. And then you also helped avoid, downtime or using an unsafe asset. You wouldn't see that unless you're actually out seeing the people filling out the paper, entering it into a computer. And there's, countless examples like that. But that's been the fuel, the oxygen for our product roadmap.
Totally. And there's a lot of these quantitative insights tell you the what's going on, but the qualitative insights usually tell you the why.
Right.
And that brings me to the next question, right? As you try to consolidate those different types of insights, how do you go about then prioritizing what to do next?
So we have a framework that I think we did intuitively in the early days, and we're now a little bit more thoughtful about how we articulate it, which is, some industries will call it a 70-20-10 framework, where you think about 70% of your roadmap capacity going towards improving your core products, 20% into incremental adjacencies, and then 10% into ideas that are high risk but could be really big in terms of impact both to customers and the business. And so first, we have more things that we could possibly be working on than we have hours in the day. So we think about, are we kind of laddering our bets and working across these different horizons? And it's not as precise as, putting it into a formula and saying, is it exactly 70 or 20 or 10? And but the framework of, are we working on some things that are potentially really high impact and by definition, therefore have a lot more uncertainty? Are we working on some of those? Are we not be consuming all of our capacity with near-term enhancements? At the same time, are we also doing a lot of the things that our customers are asking for that we know are going to improve the product, are going to translate to more customer impact, competitive differentiation, et cetera? And then do we have some in the middle? So that's kind of from a time horizon or risk perspective. And then, the other thing that I found from the early days has been really helpful with prioritization is having a really big sales funnel and having a really strong relationship between our go-to-market teams and our sales and sales engineering teams on the front lines, and our product and engineering teams who are prioritizing the roadmap. And, we really like to show roadmap ideas both to our existing customers and in some cases even to prospects, and kind of do the allergy test of, hey, here's a prototype or demo of 5 things that we're thinking about. We'd love to hear which of these would be most helpful, and they are very clear with their opinions, and you start getting a lot of signal there about what are the things that are maybe really high impact but to a small niche. What are the things that are broadly applicable and resonating, and really using that to help sort the roadmap as well.
I do that as well. And sometimes it just takes 5, 6 conversations with the right ICP to determine like what's the right direction. So sometimes it's just like this elaborated research that is going to take 2, 3 months, or a consultant to then tell you something and then leave.
Yeah, exactly. And I think related is, we found that actually getting something into a working prototype that we can get in front of the customer is really helpful in understanding what does it need to do next, and helping us understand, is it a case where actually a simple solution solves a problem and we can get it out quickly and move on to the next thing? Or is it something that we need to continue to iterate on? And the faster we can get real working code out to real users and then run that feedback loop, that's really what allows us to triangulate.
So how do you ensure that there is enough velocity?
One of the things that we really try to instill is this idea of continual demoing and iteration, and demoing to customers to get feedback, getting early products out in their hands, even if it's an alpha or a prototype, getting it in front of the user's hands, and that makes the velocity kind of self-propelling. And we really try to set the tone. So we have a regular, we call it a product previews meeting, where we have, call it dozen most ambiguous or strategic new products or features that we're working on. And we actually have the engineers who are working on the products demo. Our PMs get to demo a lot, so it's an opportunity for the engineers to demo their work. And I attend these sessions. Our CEO and a co-founder and CTO attend as well. And it's an opportunity for us to give them feedback and kind of reinforce that iteration. And then when they show us what they're building, we're actually able to take that, and when we're out meeting with customers, we're able to demo these work in progress products to customers, and we're clear with them about what's work in progress, what's ready for prime time, and then bring that feedback directly to the engineers and product teams, and help them get that feedback faster. And then I think that sets the tone that if you have your leadership operating in this mode, then it kind of extends to all of the other teams and all of the other work happening across the organization.
Totally. It sets the tone and it also accelerates the cadence because it's a short cycle. And then you know that you're going to be in front of the CPO and other co-founders.
Exactly, and honestly, it's fun. It's probably my favorite meeting of the week is getting to see all the work that's been done.
So from an org design perspective, how do you make sure that you are mapping out the team to the different industries and products that you're building?
So first, just a little bit about the product portfolio, right? We serve a lot of industries. Most of the products that we build are actually horizontal products that work across operations industries. And if things are really industry specific, that's where we say, hey, we have a great developer platform. Third parties can build those specialized kind of plugins. We think about building the things that are widely applicable across operations. And so we have a common platform that underpins our products that's ingesting all the data and organizing it. And then we have applications that sit on top. So by and large, our team is organized into product groups around these different applications. And then we have a team focused on the platform layer, and then teams focused on the hardware products that are ingesting data into the system. And beyond that, it's different organization structures for different teams, depending on the maturity of the business, depending on the experience of the people who are in different roles. And we try to not have religion about organizational structures, but in some cases we have the more traditional product management and engineering teams that are parallel, sitting side by side. Sometimes we have integrated teams under single leader, especially when we have a earlier stage product that's iterating really quickly. And we're fairly flexible about that structure as long as we are operating iteratively and we're able to make decisions quickly.
I want to dig on that because the word reorg sounds very scary, right? Especially for people, they don't know how that's going to affect them. So normalizing and maybe even renaming that as more of an iteration and update and improvement to the org, I think sounds easier to digest. But still, like, how often do you go about making this type of tweaks, and how, in general, how do you go about making change in a way that can land the right way?
Yeah. So I would say first, in general, our product development is working really well. So we're not trying to make big, drastic organizational changes. But as the organization is growing, as products are growing, things are always changing as people's careers are developing. And so we think about it as constant incremental iteration, just like our products. And the way that I explain it is I think of our organization or a company as a product as well. And if we're being iterative, if we're being data driven, if we're trying things and doing more of what's working and doing less of what's working with the products we're selling to our customers, we'd want to run our teams that way as well. And so that's the spirit. And I think for people who have been with the organization for a little while, they see, yep, things change from time to time, but as long as people are able to be working with really good people doing high impact work, and they're getting some variety, getting to work on different problems, working on different parts of the tech stack, etc. It actually is a great environment for the folks who are building.
Kieran, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.